Keys to Experiencing Azusa Fire, Lessons from the Revival That Changed the Landscape of Global Christianity, will finally be released this April at the 118th anniversary of Azusa Street. Now, I had planned to ask Rick to write the foreword for this, but the publisher had a better idea. He said, ask Rick to write a chapter on how the Azusa Street revival speaks prophetically to what God is doing today. I did. Rick said yes. And as you can see in the lower left-hand corner of your screen, Rick is now the co-author of this book. That was his idea. But as you can also see on the bottom left corner there, this is the first ever joint publication of Destiny Image and Morning Star, which was also Rick's idea. Folks, it just doesn't get any better than this. The photos and the layout are incredible and worth the $20 price for the book, which you can pre-order on Amazon right now if you want to, or you can get them in our bookstore sometime in March. They will be here. Because of my friendship with the archivist at the Flower Pentecostal Heritage Center in Springfield, Missouri, I was able to obtain a bunch of really nice, high-quality photos. Thank you, Glenn. Plus, I found some really cool photos from the Southern California Historical Society, like this one. Check that out. When William Seymour arrived in Los Angeles in 1906, this is exactly what he saw when he arrived there. I mean, this makes you feel like you're actually there. And then here is the La Grande train station where everyone first arrived in Los Angeles from all over the world to attend this revival. And this is just a few blocks from Azusa Street. I even found a photo of the exact trolley Seymour rode to Pasadena to supernaturally secure the funds to rent 312 Azusa Street. You can read that, the stories in the book. Supernatural how the Lord led him to Pasadena and just walked in somebody's house, and the rest is history. I mean, they took up an offering, and it was exactly the money that he needed to rent the building. By the way, all those photos that I just showed you were all taken in 1906. So I'm telling you, this is just God, how all of this was put together. The first time I studied Azusa Street for the Pentecost to the Present books, I studied it from a linear viewpoint, meaning the events leading up to and after, okay? This time I studied the revival from a lateral or panoramic view because I wanted to know what was God doing in Los Angeles in 1906. And I was shocked. The entire city was on fire and ripe for revival. The First Baptist Church of Los Angeles was having revival meetings. British-born, Spurgeon-trained Pastor Joseph Smale had just returned from the Welsh revival. He even knew Evan Roberts, the leader of that revival. He brought the Welsh revival back to Los Angeles with him. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, the young men at the Methodist churches were on fire. They were praying for revival and experiencing revival in the Methodist churches. The Free Methodists had a settlement there in Los Angeles at the time, brand new settlement. And then this guy, that's Evan Roberts there. And then Dr. Finis Yoakum, who was a John Alexander Dowie figure, was also in Los Angeles at that time. Dr. Yoakum was a medical doctor who had been injured in a buggy accident when he lived in Colorado and then moved to the warmer climate of Los Angeles, hoping that it would help him recover from his injuries. But instead, he was supernaturally healed when a Missionary Alliance pastor laid hands on him. And then he just left his medical practice to really start healing the sick. And like Dowie, he set up several healing homes in Los Angeles, including his own home that you see here, where many were healed and some even raised from the dead. Dr. Yoakum founded the Pisgah Home Movement, which eventually went nationwide. And then there were these holiness missions, black and white congregations all over Los Angeles that had recently split off from the Methodists, and they were also having tarrying meetings for the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit was showing up in many of those meetings. There was even a group of Armenian immigrants who were meeting in this home. Demas Shakarian, founder of the Full Gospel Businessmen's Fellowship, which was part of the charismatic movement that we were all a part of, had a grandfather by the same name living in Los Angeles in 1906, who you see here. He literally stumbled on the revival one day while walking down Azusa Street. Demos heard people praying in tongues and shouting and dancing just like they did in Armenia before they moved to America. In Armenia, they were called spiritual jumpers and leapers because they skipped like calves and jumped when they worshiped God. Demas and his brother-in-law couldn't believe that there were Christians in America, much less in Los Angeles, who shouted and sang and jumped and danced just like they did in Armenia. They couldn't believe it. So with all these groups in Los Angeles in 1906, on fire and ripe for revival, I asked the Lord, why did you pick this group on Azusa Street for your next worldwide revival and movement? He said, because, that's the grandfather there, because they were the humblest. And then I started reading the testimonies of the people who were actually at the revival, and guess what? Every one of them said the same thing. What a humbling experience it was to go there. It was like Mary and Joseph and Jesus in the stable all over again. Oh, and guess what 312 Azusa Street had been used for just prior to holding revival meetings? A stable. The building was originally the home to the St. Stephen's African Methodist Episcopal Church, the first black congregation of Los Angeles. In the original church, the upstairs second floor was the sanctuary. You can see the congregation here on the stairs leading up to the sanctuary. The first floor was where the church members parked their horses and buggies. But then the Methodist Church moved to a nicer part of town and rented the old building to a number of tenants. So even in 1906, Azusa Street was in a bad part of town. So before Seymour rented it, it had been used as a wholesale house, warehouse, lumberyard, stockyard, tombstone shop, and most recently a stable and warehouse with rooms to rent upstairs. Sister Carney, one of the youth at Azusa Street, talked about when they were setting up for the meetings, they had to help Brother Seymour clean up after the animals to get the first floor ready for the revival meetings. She was grateful, she said, that she got to clean up after the goats with their small droppings while Brother Seymour cleaned up after the horses and cattle. They said that the flies were terrible that first summer of 1906. Since it had been a stable for years, the flies were still camped out there. They said the stench was unbearable, almost to suffocation in the summer months, with crowds of people inside. Oh, and there was no indoor plumbing. They had one outhouse out back the building. See, these are the things we never hear about Azusa Street. Why? Because no one cared. God was there. The glory of God was there. The fire of God was there. The manifest presence of God was there. And everyone was humbled when they went there.